Good morning and welcome to the National Newspaper Publicists Association's Let It Be Known. Orange Jesus? That sounds familiar, doesn't it? Barrington Salmon. Liz Cheney's scathing takedown of Trump and the GOP includes the phrase Orange Jesus. We'll talk about this unbelievable book that it is being released next week. It's already the best-selling book on Amazon.com, Liz Cheney. Also, this morning, finally a little bit of good news for Black folks. The life expectancy of Black Americans have increased since the pandemic, but there is a but to it. We'll tell you about that. And it's George Santos's day of reckoning. The House today is going to vote on whether to kick him out. And Mark Cuban, he's selling everything off. He sold the Mavericks. He's leaving Shark Tank. So I sent him an email yesterday asking him, is he running for president? He didn't respond. But we have more on that this morning. And for fans of remember that TV show from the CW? Remember those networks, the CW, and what was the other one? UPN? Girlfriends, Tracy Ellis Ross and company, Golden Brooks. And it was the other girl that I liked. But anyway, a reboot could be coming up according to words from none other than Kelsey Grammer. And I didn't know until doing a little research that Kelsey Grammer actually was the one who created and produced Girlfriends, among some other Black shows. You know Kelsey Grammer from Frasier, which happens to be a really funny show. Frasier is fun. They did a reboot going on now, Frasier. I think it's in like his 5th episode or something. The whole thing is absolutely hilarious. And also this morning, Angel Reese is back today. He just produced, right? Frasier produced it. He didn't create it. Okay, I got corrected. He's involved. He's heavily involved. Angel Reese is back tonight. She'll suit up for LSU, and we'll delve into that this morning as well. But first, you should see the headlines on Henry Kissinger, America's war criminal, the guy who has so much blood on his hands. Well, and a phrase I use a lot, evil lives a long time. Well, he's died at the age of 100, a toweringly influential former Secretary of State who earned a reputation as a sagacious diplomat, but drew international condemnation and accusations of multiple war crimes for his key role in widening the American presence in Vietnam, prolonging that forever war. He was behind the U.S. bombing of Cambodia. Well, he was 100 years old when he died yesterday. They said he died at his home in Connecticut. They didn't give a cause of death. He's a Jewish refugee from Nazi Germany who reached the pinnacle of the American political establishment and in turn became an unlikely household name. I was told this morning that someone said Carter's love and all-time nemesis died. Was laid to rest yesterday. His wife, of course, his love, and Kissinger dies on the day his wife is being laid to rest. Goodness grief. He was the Secretary of State and National Security Advisor under 2 Republican presidents, of course, Tricky Dick himself, Richard Nixon, and Gerald Ford. And he advised powerful leaders in both American political parties for decades upon decades. He came to be seen as one of the leading diplomats and international relations intellectuals of the 20th century, an exponent of the realpolitik, who orchestrated the normalization of relations with China and helped ease tensions between the U.S. and the Soviet Union. Kissinger won the Nobel Peace Prize for negotiating the settlement that ended the Vietnam War, which is ironic because Kissinger was the primary reason that war went on and on and on and on. Kissinger helped open diplomatic relations between the U.S. and China during the Nixon administration in the early 1970s, but he was also one of the most reviled public figures of his generation, one whose legacy is going to always be linked with bloodshed around the world. He was synonymous with the brutality of American power and some of the costliest foreign policy decisions in modern history. David Youngblood says he should have been labeled a war criminal. Wow. Henry Kissinger, 100 years old. Indeed, evil lives a long time. Yes, and thanks for correcting me on Kelsey Grammer. He is funny though, but we're gonna talk about that later. How about this? And Barrington, I know somewhere is smiling and probably saying, "Gosh, I should have trademarked that Orange Jesus thing." But Donald Trump is, quote, the most dangerous man ever to inhabit the Oval Office. And a large swath of Republicans have proven that they are nothing more than, quote, enablers and collaborators willing to violate their oath to the Constitution out of political expediency and loyalty to the twice impeached former president. Those are the words, the scathing assessment from former GOP rep Liz Cheney, who has penned the book Oath and Honor. It's a detailed expose, wrote about it. It's on Black Press USA right now. It's about Trump's 4 years in the White House and how many of her colleagues cowered to the whims of an out of control wannabe dictator. Liz Cheney appeared to have left no stone unturned in this memoir. It's going to hit the shelves next week, but it's already the best selling book there is. We're talking about Britney Spears and all. Well, this book, the pre-sales have made it the best-selling book. And when you start to see why, to read it, you see why. She puts together emails and phone calls and conversations with people like, yeah, House Speaker Kevin McCarthy, his successor Mike Johnson. Here's what she says of McCarthy. She said that he knew Trump lost the 2020 election to Biden, but went along with Trump's lies. She referred to Johnson as a fanboy who, quote, appeared especially susceptible to flattery from Trump and aspired to being anywhere in Trump's orbit. Trump, of course, he currently is facing 91 felony counts in 4 jurisdictions. Much of the charges stem from his attempts or alleged attempts to steal the 2020 election. Of course, earlier this year, a civil jury found him responsible for sexually assaulting the writer E. Jean Carroll, and he was ordered to pay her $5 million in damages. Despite 4 indictments, his loss in the sexual assault civil trial and his promise of retribution against his political enemies. And you know Liz Cheney's at the top of that list now. He is the front runner for the 2024 Republican presidential nomination. And several polls, whether we choose to believe them or not, have him leading Biden in the general election. Liz says, as a nation, we can endure damaging policies for a 4-year term, but we cannot survive a president willing to terminate our Constitution. It's a 384-page takedown. It's and one passage she said Trump is referred to as Orange Jesus, a term Liz Cheney said regularly is used by Jim Jordan, of all people. Of course, we know Barrington Salmon, our correspondent, has used that long before Jim Jordan. But using text messages, emails, calls, and meetings, as well as personal conversations, Cheney goes off on her GOP colleagues. She reams them for being complicit in threats against democracy. She says, quote, so strong is the lure of power that men and women who had once seemed reasonable and responsible were suddenly willing to violate their oath to the Constitution out of political expediency and loyalty to Donald Trump. She unveils her previously undisclosed conversations with McCarthy, which happened just 48 hours after the ballots were cast, where McCarthy spilled the beans that he had a T to T with Trump. According to the book, McCarthy spilled, quote, he knows it's over. He needs to go through all the stages of grief, is what McCarthy said of Trump after he lost to Biden. But Cheney, Liz says that in Trump's world, those stages of grief appear to involve tweeting in all caps. When McCarthy declared on Fox News that, quote, President Trump won this election, Cheney noted that McCarthy knew that what he was saying was not true. The book further uncovers how other Republicans, like Jim Jordan, brushed aside legal processes in a GOP conference call with Jordan laying it out. He says, the only thing that matters is winning. Liz Cheney also took shots at Johnson, narrating how he pressed Republicans to back a brief challenge in the election result. Despite highlighting flaws in his legal arguments, Johnson insisted, he said, we just need to do this one last thing for Trump. Before Trump's followers stormed the Capitol on January 6th, Cheney described a scene in the GOP cloakroom where members signed electoral vote objection sheets, despite acknowledging that most were aware that it was a farce and merely a symbolic gesture of allegiance to Trump. Republican Congressman Mark Green then said, the things we do for the orange Jesus. The orange. Cheney accused McCarthy of repeated falsehoods in a craven embrace of Trump, detailing his post January 6th visit to Mar-a-Lago. McCarthy claimed, this is hilarious, he claimed that Trump's staff has summoned him to Mar-a-Lago because of concerns about his well-being, Trump's well-being. Well, Liz Cheney responded by saying, what? You went to Mar-a-Lago because Trump's not eating? She revealed her unintentional inclusion in a White House surrogate call on January 4th, where Trump allies mapped out plans to overturn the election through Mike Pence. She left with a, quote, terrible feeling, unsure if Pence would withstand the pressure. And she disclosed that Paul Ryan also harbored doubts. But despite the warnings from her father, former Vice President Dick Cheney, about her safety on January 6th, see, they all knew about it. She was unwavering. She voted for impeachment later on January 13th, receiving private support from former President George W. Bush, who praised her for her courage. Cheney's critique extends to Senate Republicans and the right-wing media, detailing conversations with Mitch McConnell. Initially, McConnell, she said, was supportive of impeachment, but he made a U-turn because he mistakenly believed that Trump would just fade off into the sunset. She criticized Fox News, of course, and other right-wing media, and mentioned her unsuccessful effort to convince Paul Ryan to support a show on Fox that debunked addressing election lies. Instead, she claims that Fox allowed Tucker Carlson to disseminate intentional disinformation about January 6th, which they still are doing. David says, if we reelect this man, we deserve to lose this democracy. And Power 96 says, Kevin McCarthy sold his soul and still got the boot from being Speaker of the House. What a pathetic human. And now they Power 96 reports this morning that McCarthy might also step away from Congress before the year's out. And how about, I don't know how many people saw Vice President Kamala Harris did a some sort of thing with the New York Times. It was a video thing, and and McCarthy was criticizing Joe Biden's negotiating skills. Kamala Harris When they asked her about that, because McCarthy had said, "Oh, he had to keep looking at notes," and of course that was a nod to his age, as if him and Trump is not essentially the same age. Um, and she goes, "With all due respect, I, I don't think he's in a position to talk about negotiation. We've seen what happened there in the House. I mean, first of all, it took him what 15, 16 rounds the first time. And then that negotiation ended really badly because he left in a clause or allowed a clause to be put in that anybody can call for his ouster if they didn't like what he did. And sure enough, the creep from Florida, Matt Gaetz, he called for his ouster and he's gone. And now he's apparently, based on several reports, about to leave Congress altogether. David Youngblood said he's a little disappointed in the vice president for going to Houston and not endorsing Sheila Jackson Lee. Hmm. Well, that's interesting. I guess CBC for life. Nope, I guess not. Once a CBC, always a CBC. I guess that only applies Power 96 to the New York Knicks. Once a Knick, always a Knick. So some good news for Black folks this morning. At least a little bit. The life expectancy, the latest findings on life expectancy in the United States from the National Center for Health Statistics and the CDC underscored a noteworthy upswing for the African American population in 2022, with the fallout from the pandemic continuing. Health officials have highlighted the positive strides in health outcomes, particularly for Black Americans. The report, which was very comprehensive, by the way, it utilizes provisional vital stats data from 2022, providing crucial insights into the nation's health landscape, notably life expectancy at birth for the entire U.S. population increased, reaching 77.5 years in 2022, which is a significant rise of 1.1 years from 2021. The positive trend is reflected in both genders, with males experiencing a 1.3-year increase to an average lifespan of just under 75 years, and females seeing a rise of 0.9 years, or a rise to just over 80 years of age. It marked the improvement in life expectancy for the Black non-Hispanic population. That data indicated a substantial increase of 1.6 years, elevating life expectancy from 71.2 years in 2021 to 72.8 years in 2022. They claim that it represents a step towards narrowing historical disparities, but also it does signal a promising shift in health outcomes for Black Americans. The pandemic, of course, here's the but: it doesn't make up this upswing in life expectancy doesn't fully offset the 2.4 years lost between 2019 and 2021 because of the COVID-19 pandemic. Uh, Good news nonetheless. And first of all, Power 96, Nick's are spelled with a K, K-N, not Nick, like Nicholas. All right. All that retirement is getting to you. He says, if you are a Knicks fan, you are the strongest human in the universe. I watch the Knicks for comic relief. They got a really good team this year. Power 96. They had a good team last year, too. Come on. We're on the upswing. We're on the upswing. Talk about the Knicks. I'm wearing Nick orange. Oh, see. Look at that. All I'm missing is the blue. And then we're good. Well, it's George Santos Day on Capitol Hill. The U.S. House of Representatives is going to vote today on whether to expel George Santos, who has been engulfed, as we know, in scandal ever since he took office. He's been charged formally with corruption. House Speaker Mike Johnson says, he's not pushing members either way to vote to keep him or vote to expel him. Several lawmakers have introduced motions that targeted Santos after a report by his colleagues suggested that federal prosecutors should bring additional charges against the 35-year-old who fabricated large aspects of his life story in his election campaign. And that wasn't even the worst that he did. Of course, the motion requires a two-thirds majority in the House, which, of course, Republicans control by a 222 to 213 majority. Johnson, defiant as ever. I mean, Santos is defiant as ever, says he's not stepping down. They're going to have to remove him. That's about how it's going to come down today. He says we'll just see how they vote today. Well, that vote is expected to come this afternoon. So we will see. We will see. So Mark Cuban has started divesting stuff. um, well, two quick things on Santos before I move to Mark Cuban. David Youngblood says, "I sure hope they fail to expel him." And Power 96 says, "If I was a Democrat, I would vote to keep him so I could use him in every political ad." The problem with Democrats, as we know, we always say it, they just don't seem to uh, exploit the gift horses that they receive all the time. But I love that thing there. Full of lies. Moving on. Mark Cuban uh, he says he's leaving Shark Tank, and now he's announced he's sold the Dallas Mavericks, and there's speculation is rampant that he has set his sights on the Oval Office. He he says that he right now, his official statement is right now he is not running for president. He just said it's time that he leaves Shark Tank, and also he had some other things in mind that he wants to do that perhaps being the principal owner of the Dallas Mavericks would get in the way. As far as Shark Tank, he says, "I love the show because it sends the message the American dream is alive and well." He's been a staple of that show since 2011, sitting alongside 5 other judges who decide whether or not to invest in various startup companies. So he also sold the Mavericks to billionaire Miriam Alderson and her family. So social media is really going on and on and on about whether he's going to run for president. David says that is Mark Cuban foretelling the economic future we're about to undergo? Is he telling? Yeah, it could be one thing. Could be one thing. Well, one Twitter user says, "How can I place a bet that Mark Cuban is about to run for president?" And another says, "My prediction. And by the way, I have zero internal knowledge, but I think Mark is running for president in 2028." And a third person wrote on Twitter, "Selling the Mavs, leaving Shark Tank to spend summers with kids feels like investing time in family, being lower profile than to then reemerge as a slightly different brand." Could be, could be. So we'll see. Reached out to Mark Cuban yesterday, and he did not respond. He probably doesn't want to respond about possibly running for office. Well, over to some entertainment news now this morning before we close out. Fans of the beloved series Girlfriends have long clamored for a revival since its abrupt end in February of 2008 without a proper finale. Well, Kelsey Grammer was questioned about any updates regarding a potential reboot. It came amidst the resurgence of his own series, Frasier, which made a return nearly decades, 3 decades, I should say, after its initial airing. And this is what Kelsey Grammer said. He says, I would love to reboot Girlfriends. Of course, it would probably be a different kind of show, but we got the game back on, and that was wonderful. See, I didn't even know he was producing the game. He says, I don't know if Paramount Plus is going to grab another season of that, but you never know. I think they should because I know many people who love that show and love those characters and would like to see them continue. He says, we'll see what happens. But yeah, I would love to reboot Girlfriends and I would love to see Tracy Ellis Ross in that role again. She was terrific in that. The show was a wonderful opportunity to see all those young women start out. It's such a beautiful ensemble effort, and I was very proud to be connected to Girlfriends. Remember, it started in 2000 on UPN. Every time I think about UPN and the WB and the CW, I always think it was Paul Mooney who turned that UPN acronym into something else. He was noted at the time, and there's the girlfriends. Um, it's so funny because I liked everybody except Tracy. But he, at the time, UPN was like launching all of these black shows, and Paul Mooney referred to it as "You Pick a Negro" as the acronym for UPN. He didn't actually say Negro, but anyway. Nonetheless, the writer strike, remember there was a writer strike, not just this year, but in 2007 and 2008, which is what really derailed Girlfriends at that time. It didn't recover or return from that writer strike in 2008. And so Kelsey Grammer's saying, I wanted to return. So, when you have such a powerful individual in Hollywood saying they want something, 9 times out of 10, they get it, especially if your name is Kelsey Grammer. Of course, Girlfriend starred, of course, Tracy Ellis Ross, as we said, Jill Marie Jones, Golden Brooks, Persia White, and Reggie Hayes. The show's spinoff series, The Game, debuted in 2006. And Daniela Pierre said, it looks like, how you doing, Daniela? It looks like Bounce is the newer version of UPN and the WB. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Well, it would be good to see these uh, ladies back in action. They were pretty good. They were really, it was a good show, and Reggie Hayes really played well off of them, and so it was really cool. Hey, I like that show. Well, Angel Reese is back finally. The biggest name in all of not just college women's basketball, but all of ladies basketball, women's basketball is Angel Reese, bar none. Well, she returned. She missed 4 games for undisclosed reasons, and she's going to rejoin the Tigers tonight as they play the ninth-ranked Virginia Tech. She had foreshadowed her return when she posted on social media a photo of herself inside LSU's basketball stadium, the Pete Maravich Assembly Center. Coach Kim Mulkey declined to go into detail about why Angel was not with the team for much of the past 2 weeks, beyond saying that it stemmed from unspecified, quote, locker room issues. Of course, Angel is one of the most, she is the most, they say one of the most, she is the most popular and certainly one of the most commercially successful players in her sport. She missed the games at Southeastern Louisiana and against Texas Southern in Baton Rouge before also not accompanying the team to the Cayman Islands for a holiday tournament. LSU still went on to defeat Niagara and Virginia in the Cayman Islands last weekend. But look, you know, sure, Kim Mulkey is a Hall of Famer and all that stuff. But let's face it, she's not the draw. She is not the draw. The draw is Angel Reese. And what kills me is I was reading some of the articles that have come out. We have an article about it on Black Press USA about Angel's return. Um, but I was reading some of the articles, and one of the things they keep mentioning is the gesture she made during the finals last year. But they never mention that it was in response to the gestures that the other young girl kept making, that they thought it was so cute until Angel did it. That's the that's the way it is, folks. That's the way it is. But Angel Reese is back tonight. So some big things to look forward to today. If you are in the political realm, you look forward to the vote on George Santos. And if you are a sports fan or just a popular culture fan, Angel Reese returns tonight. So check her out. And you know what? We'll tell you tomorrow how she did. So join us tomorrow for another edition of Let It Be Known. We thank you for watching.